Alright, I'm going to not make this video really long, but this is like on sound sculpting with your EQ and automation. I'm going to try to make this very simple. This whole concept can be very complex, and I've messed around with it for I don't know how long. And sometimes I get real frustrated with it, but the basic understanding is really cool. Because basically, let's say you've got this track, right? And you're trying to automate it. Well, the cool thing is if you look like, if you look at most of the time, you've got like a sonogram here, that the major, this is an off note off behind the primary frequency. And for the most part, you've got, maybe 9, 10, frequencies going across there that are really prominent. And so if you focus on those and sculpting those, that the other stuff after that kind of rolls off. And you can put another EQ on the end and automate that also, that just shapes the roll-off frequencies, the higher end roll-off frequencies. So just try to keep that in mind so you don't get lost in all that upper end stuff, that the frequencies are just real tight and close together. And it's like, I can't automate in between all those and clean those up and all test and, automate those frequencies. Because this is the cool thing. Now, what I was doing here isn't really as important as the automation itself. Because I could have had this going up and boosting frequencies or attenuating frequencies or just about anything, The pattern is the key. So the issue is most of the time that I'll go through in my DAW and I will listen to it for a while, and then I'll go into like whatever you have in the studio to slow the track down. I'll slow the track down quite a bit so that I can do automation. I'll put on latch so I can write each one. Each one of my parameters on my EQ have been selected, just the frequency. Now I haven't even got to the gains and all that kind of stuff, because you can automate all that in the same way. So it's really cool, because just be real careful you don't get lost in that. Because most of the time EQ work doesn't get that complex. A lot of people will just throw this stuff out in the garbage because they don't understand it doesn't take that much to do. They'll high pass, low pass it, and they might do a little notch here. The problem is that those notches and those boosts don't follow the flow of this music, that you're singing up higher, down lower. That notch stays right where it's at. It doesn't follow that. So you're boosting or attenuating all kinds of other different frequencies that you probably don't want to for that individual's timbre or that instrument's timbre. So a cool way to do it, like I'll give you an example. Let's say that this is a vocal. So what I had it done is when this lady started singing, I said, okay, I want you to hit a mid-range note. This is your upper range, your lower range. I want something anywhere in between, and just hold a note for me, about a good mid, not really super loud, not really super quiet, just somewhere in the mid-range. And hold that note for me a couple minutes at the beginning of the track or on a separate track just to have for reference. And what I use that for is to do this. That way I can take that note, I can figure out like what needs to be happening in that, her timbre, the timbre of her voice. So that's what we're trying to sculpt, or the timbre of the instrument, okay? So because once you get this done, you can automate it throughout the whole track, whatever she's singing. And you might have to adjust it a little bit when she's singing really high or really low or screeching or talking, I don't know what she might be doing. Does that make sense? And sometimes you might not want to worry about it at all and that kind of stuff, but does that make sense? So the idea, you've set those to do automation on them, and you've slowed down the track, and next you've gone through it, and you go through it on the first one, pretend these ones ain't on here, and you've automated this through that, on her voice or just on that note. Let's say you just got that note there, and you're trying to set what boost or attenuate whatever frequencies are there, right? So you're getting a good understanding of separation on there. So, and especially if it's at the beginning of the track, that way this is a lot easier, because now you know the separation between the automation. And then basically, once you understand that you've got a real good understanding from at least one note, what the separation is, what you need to boost and all that stuff. The next thing I do is it's most of the time real simple for me. I'll fidge with it, in different sections and stuff like that. But I'll go through and I'll say, well, I'm going to pick the primary frequency and around that. Now, a lot of times there's dirt after the primary frequency or before it. or something like that that I want to automate and clean up, or I want to boost that frequency or attenuate it a little bit. And basically, I can automate it a volume for the whole track later on. But what I want to do is I'm kind of shaping the timbre of the voice. So I'll go through and I'll say, okay, well, on this track or on this vocal, that here's what's happening to it. And basically, the timbres aren't going to change so much. It's like the distance of them. Does that make sense? You know, once the instrument, you understand the distance of the timbres, or which one's louder or lower, or if you're boosting here or attenuating or whatever you're doing, that it'll stay a lot of times fairly consistent. You might have to fudge it a little bit now and then, but it's certainly a lot better than just leaving it static, you know, and having one notch there that, you know, the instrument or the vocal's going all over the place and it's not following your notch, you know how, way, shape, or form. So you're going through it and you set that up on that to where that's going along there. And you do your low pass or your low cut and your high cut automations first, because you really can't copy and paste those. And once you've got those done to where that kind of follows around there, then do the first one and just automate it through the track. You know, whatever you're doing, if you're raising this or lowering it, or you're trying to cut some fudge out of the middle because it's got wideband distortion on it, and you're trying to follow it, you've done a cut here to try to cut out some crap, and follow it along there. And a lot of times those kind of issues will be fairly much going through between all the timbres, so you can do something like I'm doing right there. And once you've got that done, gone through that section or that track that you've done, then it's real easy just to go back and just take that section, you know, select all of it, and then, you know, copy that, you know, however it is in your dollar. For your here, it's Control C, and then copy it. And go to the next track, whichever the next track, or the next frequency, the next, you know, parameter you've got, you know, the next one will be low to mid frequency, and then just paste that to that, and then bring the start marker back to 0, and then Control V or whatever your DAW does and paste it there. Then all you got to do is go back in here and select that whole thing and then adjust it up or down until it's the distance it's supposed to be between, you know, one frequency, one, you know, harmonic, or one frequency you're focused on and another, so that it follows that first one, because the timbre separation should stay fairly constant. Even though they're going up or down or dynamics or whatever, the separation of those frequencies should stay pretty consistent. Does that make sense? And then you just do that with all of it. And then you go to the next one to do the same thing. And on this one, you know, you've got like five of them on here. But you can set another EQ up on after that, because the main harmonic content's usually 9 or 10 harmonics, you know, even odd harmonics or a combination of both, to form the timbre. And then you get a whole lot of roll-off that starts, you know, musically it starts becoming whole steps and then half steps, you know, to infinity, you know, as far as the harmonic content, which basically you can put a third EQ on it and then just kind of shape that with automation like you did the high pass here or the high cut, and just kind of, you can fine tune that a little bit. But the cool thing about that is you really shape that track, and after you do it for a little bit, that it seems like a lot of work, but you do it like once you do it 3 or 4 times and you practice on it, like just get a practice vocal track and practice on doing it a little bit, and you'd be surprised that how fast you can just follow that first primary frequency and get that distance set up, get the actual how it's where it's going up and down or whatever, and you get that automated, you know, with your latch on, and then just, you know, tap on, you know, whichever frequency you are here, and then just follow it, you know, click it and then follow it around so that it writes, you know, on the track here, on the automation track, and then just, you know, copy that and then paste it onto the next automation, you know, the next automation. You know, you got that done, you know, you go up and follow it, put it onto the low to mid frequencies, and then paste it onto there, and then it'll automatically paste it. And you can see it's basically set up, you've got all the harmonics and an actual automation of your EQ that's going to follow each one of those harmonics in the track, however you want them to. You want to attenuate some harmonics, boost some harmonics, you want to cut some distortion out somewhere, but you don't want it to be, you know that up in here that you've got some distortion up in this upper area, and you know you've got some up in here or up in here or if back behind it or right in here, and then you can adjust the cue here and you know and follow it along and automate it, and then once you start copying and pasting, that basically it'll go that way and it'll follow it through the whole track. And it sounds like a lot of work, but it really isn't that much, especially for instruments or vocals that are going to be out front and you really want to spend the time. You know how much money people spend on $30,000 microphone because it makes the timbre of their voice sound good? I mean, and you can do that kind of stuff with your EQ, because if you start boosting or attenuating frequencies, I mean, sometimes you might have to add some saturation to get a decent sound or something like that. But a lot of times, just their natural voice, you just start playing with the harmonic content of their voice, and normally that'll do it. That guy's got the third harmonic in his voice just doesn't sound right, and you're going to boost a little bit or attenuate a little bit, and it just cleaned it up and made it sound really nice because it's all just about harmonic content. Even odd harmonics, you know, non-harmonic content, harmonic distortion, anything like that. And you can shape it really well with that. And once you get the hang of that, then it's a huge tool for shaping the content of that track. And once you start messing around with that and you get an understanding of that, just that basic concept, and if you just follow those basic guidelines there, the best you can, and just kind of mess around with it, you'll be amazed at how fast that you can get that vocal, and the EQ work is actually becoming really finite EQ work instead of you just low passed it, band passed it, and then, you know, you do a little notch somewhere, you know, that the vocals ain't going to follow any dang way. You know, that if you did a notch here, that because you're listening to our vocals and this frequency here is a problem, so you notch right there because you don't like that, well, that notch isn't going to follow her vocals around unless you automate it. So you're going to have to automate it. And there's a whole nother tool, because if you automate that notch, then it's going to follow. And if you automate it correctly throughout the whole thing, that it can also be a guidepost, because most of the harmonic content is going to follow that guideline you just set up. So if you had any other things you want to boost or attenuate in the track, you can just copy that automation you did, paste it to another another frequency, or another, you know, another node, and then, you know, adjust it up or down until it's where it's supposed to be, and then you can do your, you know, I want to automate it up or down, or, you know, attenuate or boost or whatever. But that automation, that initial automation of following that frequency is already set up. Does that make sense? And then you can go through there and do other, I mean, you can automate for days, dude, on the gains and the cue and all kinds of stuff. Be real careful of that, because you can get lost in that. You're trying to slow down the audio, speed it up, and you just be going, oh, dude, you die right in front of your computer trying to figure out how to get that completely automated. So once you get an understanding of what it's doing to it, and you've messed around with it on a couple tracks and really spent some time working with it, that it's a huge tool, and you get used to a little bit of a workflow doing it, and your EQ work will become that much better. I mean, by magnitude, your EQ work will become that much better, because you are actually sound sculpting that whole track the way it should be sound sculpted when you're using EQ. So I hope that that gave a real basic concept and understanding of that, and a way to do it fairly easily, and, you know, mess around with it. You might find some cool other little tricks to make it go faster that you can copy and paste and just get cruising along. And sometimes you don't have to even do that much. You might find just one or two frequencies, or two or three frequencies that you're automating like that to really sculpt it through the mix. Or even sometimes just one little notch that they got one frequency in their voice that just sucks, and it just screws up their entire voice. And so you notch it a little bit, and then you automate it around, you know, and follow it with the sonogram, you know, slow down the audio track and notch it once you figure out about how much you wanted to notch out of it, holding it on one note. Then slow down the track and do some automation on it, make it nice and neat, following it around, and you'd be surprised. Your EQ work has just improved 100%, dude, because you're doing some really finite EQ work. So I tried to make that as simple and short as possible, but I certainly hope that helped, because that is a huge tool, and it takes a little bit of work to get used to, but it's a really cool tool, and it's available right there in your DAW with your EQ. Peace, hope, love. Have a nice day.